Hi, John, the flippin' idiot here on a rainy day, and I'm going to talk to you about a follow-up to Chinese workbenches. I saw the Rex Kruger video about his interest in discovering more about Chinese workbenches, and I happen to live in a city that has a store that brings in vintage Chinese benches from China. That said, what I learned about going to that store and taking some pictures and what I'm going to show you in this video is kind of a slideshow of the benches, actual benches from China that I was able to record. And I was going to say, China seems like it's a nation of benches from what I could gather. There is the planar utilitarian Chinese workbench that Rex Kruger created, and I did manage to find an example of that. But there's also a table in there with breadboard ends, so I thought that was interesting. And then there's some more ornate benches, and those I asked the owner of the shop what the story was with those, and she said that they are public benches. And so I thought about it. I said, there's no reason that other countries that don't have maybe had their iron and cement revolution like the United States and put up all these public parks and public seating with either wrought iron with wood seats, or in parks we have a lot of concrete benches with wood seating. But in rural parts of China, you'd have to believe that it would be very common for people to sit on maybe nicer or slightly more ornate wooden benches. And then you'll see a little green one in the video, and that I asked her about why it was so tiny, and she said that's actually a children's bench. So I don't know if that's how they sit on them at school, but it was a very simple. If you look at the edges, it's routered or molded, so there's a little bit more ornate trim on that one, which I wasn't expecting, and it's painted. So I'm not sure just how old that one is. And so the other ones you'll see, they have kind of a curl around the bottom support pieces, and those are the public sitting benches. And I think some of those are painted as well, but definitely more ornate in the design. And they feature about a half-inch thick board that runs the length of the bench, and it's sandwiched in between kind of tenons at the top that on legs that are about 2x4 or 2x3, relative to what we have here in the United States. So anyways, I'll run through the slideshow. I'll do some notes, but feel free to check them out, and you will see the construction that Rex was talking about, how it's a little bit different than Western style, but that is the place where I got the inspiration for my burrito benches, kind of like a Southwest blanket bench. Okay, so here's one of the ornate benches. You can see a little extra carving underneath there, and I think it was painted white. Here's the kids' bench, so a through tenon design, and you'll see that the legs as well as the top here are carved with some kind of molding plane and painted green. You'll see some of the dimensions I was recording to figure out how big a piece of wood they were using, how tall it was, as well as the location of the stretchers. And in this next one, you're going to see how far back they set the legs from the edge. Coming up is a table that features through tenons and I believe breadboard ends to keep the top from curling. So here's a little better shot of the breadboard ends. And so you do that to keep a kind of a number of boards from twisting up. Not sure what they used for glue. One word about the wood is that it's a very dense, heavy wood. So it'd be similar to American ash. And so it was very solid. It actually does look a little bit like ash, but clearly these are antique pieces, and so they're very weathered. That one is just more of a decorative bench. This one features a little bit more of the ornate design, so it has that 1/2 inch support running the length of it, where they split the top of the leg. And on this one, they didn't split the through mortise on the top, but you'll see it's a pretty long cut into the leg to provide some extra support. And on a lot of them, they just kind of nail in a little cap. This one has that kind of that radius curve underneath it, but it doesn't have the little curl that you see on some of the other benches. Here was just an interesting, I think it's a reclaimed table, I'm not sure, but some through tenon work there. And then what I thought was interesting was the cross bracing. So I'm not sure if that's actually antique or somebody's reclaiming antique materials. But here's a better look at the underside of some of the construction of the benches that are using that extra support underneath the bench to hold it. Um, Here's a kind of get an idea of the width of some of these benches. I think the public benches are a little bit wider. So here's the double stretcher design. Um, what you're going to see on some of these is, oh, there's the offset tenon on the top. So in between there's the space for that support piece. And it's a pretty tall support as far as helping to carry the load and maybe true up the bench. But on a number of these double stretchers, you're going to see that the bottom stretcher is wedged, but the top stretcher is not. So that's just there's a mortise and tenon, but it's the tenon doesn't go through on the upper stretcher. Here you see one that has the extra curls there on the end, on the understructure. There I'm just recording some of the textures. So if you're thinking about making a weathered or a new piece of wood look like a weathered piece of wood, or distressed or aged, that's what actual distressed aged wood looks like. So I was trying to figure out how much abuse it would take to make it look like it's been beaten. So you'll see kind of some low pockets and then some gouges, and then some grooving. So probably these benches sat out in the rain and collected some water, and that led to some of the distressed effect. Um, there, I think you see it's through tenon, and then I was trying to get a kind of document the underside. There is one where it looks like they just nailed a cap on the end to kind of help hold that together. And then there is the through tenon, but not on that upper stretcher, which I thought was kind of interesting. Not exactly sure if there's a huge reason for it, other than if you wedge the bottom, you don't really need to take all that time to dig out the ends and attach your pound in your wedges and glue everything. Here are some stills of, I went to the shop at night, so the light wasn't the best. And then here's a view of that tenon, or sorry, that mortise that doesn't go all the way through. And then on some of these, you can see the grain structure. It's almost like kind of ash and elm had a baby. It's a pretty wood, but obviously it's very aged. And that was another close-up of that mortise that doesn't go all the way through. So just a few final stills. There is the wedging that they do. It looks like just a single wedge, which was interesting, and the through tenons on the top. So it's a big tenon. Okay, so thanks for watching, and I hope this was helpful to anybody that's curious about Chinese style benches. I guess you might find some inspiration that actually helps you figure out how to make those public benches if you're not so interested in the workbenches. I think it would be an interesting challenge, and it'd be interesting to know if there's a market out there for people that are looking for that style of bench with the extra ornate, I don't know what to call them, like the supports or the kind of the under bench structure with that little bit of curl or kind of a radius curve. So thanks again. Please subscribe if you haven't subscribed, and thanks to all my subscribers so far. And if I find out any more information or I see some cool new benches, I will make another video. Thanks.